The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony of Terran Station 7, but Marcus Chen barely noticed as he checked the atmospheric processors for the third time that day. The routine had become second nature during his 18 months on this remote planet. Far from Earth's crowded cities and political chaos, he preferred the quiet hum of machinery to the constant noise of human civilization. The planet Kepler 442c offered little beyond its rich mineral deposits and breathable atmosphere. Most colonists found it boring, but Marcus appreciated the solitude. The crystalline formations that jutted from the planet's surface caught sunlight in spectacular ways, and the native wildlife was surprisingly docile. Nothing had tried to eat him yet, which was more than he could say about his last posting on Proxima Centauri. Marcus was adjusting a coolant valve when he heard the sound. It started as a low rumble that made his chest vibrate, then grew into something that resembled a cross between a thunderclap and a freight train. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and several tools fell from his workbench. He looked up to see something impossible streaking across the pale blue sky. The object was massive, easily the size of a city block, and it moved with a grace that no machine could match. Scales the color of fresh blood caught the sunlight as the creature banked sharply, circling the small human settlement like a predator sizing up its prey. "Dragon," Marcus whispered, using the term that had become common among human colonists when describing the apex predators of the Outer Rim. The scientific name was something unpronounceable involving too many syllables and consonants, but everyone knew what you meant when you said dragon. This one was bigger than any he had seen in the colony databases. Much bigger. And it was not alone. 3 more shapes appeared on the horizon, moving in perfect formation. Their wing beats created a rhythm that Marcus could feel in his bones. The lead dragon released a sound that was part roar, part song, and entirely terrifying. It echoed off the canyon walls and made every piece of metal in the settlement ring like a bell. Marcus activated his emergency communicator with shaking hands. "Settlement Control, this is Marcus Chen at Mining Station 3. We have multiple large aerial contacts approaching. Request immediate evacuation protocols." The response was immediate, but not reassuring. "Marcus, this is Control. All evacuation shuttles are currently grounded for maintenance. Estimated repair time is 6 hours minimum. Recommend shelter in place and avoid any provocative actions." "Shelter in place?" Marcus stared at the approaching dragons. These things could level this entire settlement without breaking a sweat. "We are monitoring the situation. Colony defense grid is powering up, but engagement protocols require unanimous council approval. Stay calm and keep us informed." Marcus switched off the communicator and muttered something his mother would not have approved of. Colony politics would be the death of him, literally. While the council debated and the defense grid slowly warmed up, 4 predators the size of starships were closing in on a settlement protected by nothing more than prefabricated walls and hope. The largest dragon landed first, its claws gouging deep furrows in the packed earth of the settlement's main square. Up close, Marcus could see that its scales were not just red, but seemed to shift between different shades of crimson like living fire. Its eyes were golden and intelligent, scanning the human structures with obvious purpose. The other 3 landed in a defensive formation around their leader. Each was slightly smaller but no less impressive. Their scales showed subtle variations in color and pattern, like fingerprints written in bone and fire. Steam rose from their nostrils as they breathed, and the air around them shimmered with heat. Marcus realized he was holding his breath. The dragons had made no aggressive moves yet, but their presence was overwhelming. Each one was easily 40 meters long from nose to tail, with wingspans that could shadow a football field. Their very existence seemed to bend reality around them, making the human settlement look like a collection of toys. The lead dragon's head turned toward Marcus's position. Those golden eyes locked onto his hiding place behind the atmospheric processor, and Marcus felt his heart stop. There was something disturbingly human about that gaze, an intelligence that went far beyond animal instinct. "Human," the dragon said. Marcus blinked several times, convinced he was hallucinating. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through his skull rather than his ears. It carried the weight of centuries and the heat of forge fires. "You understand our speech," the dragon continued. "This is unexpected." Marcus stepped out from behind his shelter, partly because hiding seemed pointless, and partly because his legs refused to support him any longer. "You are speaking English," he managed to croak. "We speak the language of minds," the dragon replied. "Your species calls it telepathy, though your understanding of it is primitive. I am Vorthak, clan leader of the Crimson Flame. You will answer our questions." "I will try," Marcus said, proud that his voice only shook a little. "We seek our young," Vorthak said. The other dragons shifted restlessly, their claws scraping against stone. "3 hatchlings left our nesting ground 7 solar cycles ago. Their scent trail leads to this place." Marcus's mind raced. 7 solar cycles would be roughly a month in standard time. "I have not seen any young dragons," he said carefully. "The settlement maintains detailed records of all wildlife encounters. No dragons have been reported." Vorthak's eyes narrowed. "You lie. Their scent is strongest here. In this place of metal and noise, we can smell them on you." "On me?" Marcus looked down at himself. His work clothes were stained with coolant fluid and hydraulic oil, nothing that would interest a dragon. "I don't understand." One of the other dragons, this one with scales that shifted from deep red to almost purple, stepped forward. "Father," it said, "perhaps the human speaks truth. The scent is old and mixed with many others. The hatchlings may have passed through without making contact." Vorthak's massive head swung toward his offspring. "Patience, Kethera. We will search every structure if necessary. The Crimson Flame does not abandon its young." Marcus felt sweat running down his spine despite the morning chill. The idea of these creatures tearing apart the settlement while looking for dragon children was terrifying. "What do they look like?" he asked. "The hatchlings, I mean. If I saw them, I would remember." "Newly hatched dragons are roughly the size of your human transportation vehicles," Vorthak explained. "Their scales have not yet taken on the full crimson of maturity, appearing more like polished copper. They are curious creatures, drawn to warmth and movement." Marcus frowned. That description triggered something in his memory, but he could not quite place it. "Are they dangerous?" "To humans. I mean, dragon young are no more dangerous than human young," Kethera said. "They possess natural weapons but lack the experience to use them effectively. They are more likely to hide than fight." "Hide," Marcus repeated. "Where would they hide?" "Warm, dark places," Vorthak said. "Dragons are drawn to heat sources, especially in their youth. They seek comfort and safety above all else." The memory hit Marcus like a physical blow. 3 weeks ago, he had noticed that the settlement's heat recycling system was running inefficiently. The main thermal processing unit was drawing more power than usual, and the temperature readings were inconsistent. He had filed a maintenance request, but had been told to wait for the next scheduled inspection. "I might know something," Marcus said slowly, "but I need to check something first." "Can you wait here?" Vorthak's eyes flashed with something that might have been amusement. "You ask dragons to wait? Your courage borders on stupidity, small human." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But if your hatchlings are where I think they are, we will need to be very careful. They might be scared." "Lead the way," Vorthak commanded. Marcus walked toward the thermal processing facility, acutely aware of the 4 massive predators following him. Their footsteps made the ground tremble, and he could feel their body heat on his back. Other colonists had emerged from their buildings to stare at the procession, but none dared to interfere. The thermal plant was located at the edge of the settlement, housed in a building designed to look like a maintenance shed, but containing enough technology to power a small city. Marcus approached the main control panel and checked the readings. "Power consumption is up 30% from baseline," he muttered. "Internal temperature is 15 degrees higher than normal. And look at this." He pointed to a seismic sensor display. "Rhythmic vibrations, low frequency. I thought it was a mechanical issue." "What does this mean?" Cathera asked. Marcus looked up at the dragons towering over him. "I think your children are sleeping in my power plant." Vorthak's expression was unreadable. "Show us." Marcus led them to the main access door, a heavy steel barrier designed to keep out everything from curious colonists to native wildlife. The door was closed and locked, but the security pad showed that it had been accessed recently. More importantly, the metal around the frame was scored with deep scratches. "Claw marks," Marcus observed. "Something forced its way in." "Or someone let them in," Vorthak said meaningfully. Marcus ignored the implication and activated his override codes. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the chamber beyond. The thermal processing unit was a massive cylindrical structure surrounded by pipes and monitoring equipment. It hummed with contained energy and radiated warmth like a mechanical sun. And curled around its base, like cats sleeping by a fireplace, were three creatures that looked like dragons in miniature. They were exactly as Vorthak had described, roughly the size of small vehicles, with scales that gleamed like polished copper in the facility's lighting. Their wings were folded against their bodies, and their long necks were curled so that their heads rested on their flanks. They breathed slowly and deeply, completely relaxed. "By the eternal flame," Cathara whispered, "they are here." Marcus stared at the sleeping hatchlings. "How did they get inside? This facility is supposed to be secure." One of the other dragons, this one with scales darker than the others, stepped forward. Velthar was always clever with locks and barriers. Even as an egg, he could manipulate magnetic fields. As if responding to the sound of its name, one of the hatchlings stirred. Its head lifted slowly, and large golden eyes blinked in the artificial light. When it saw the adult dragons, it made a sound like a contented sigh and stretched its wings. The other two hatchlings woke immediately, their heads snapping up with alert expressions. For a moment, the chamber was silent, except for the hum of machinery and the sound of dragon breathing. Then all three hatchlings launched themselves toward their elders with cries of joy. Vorthak caught the first one, a hatchling with slightly darker scales than its siblings. The massive dragon's stern expression softened as the young one nuzzled against his neck. "Velthar, we have searched for you across 3 star systems." "We found the warm place," Velthar said, its mental voice much higher and more excited than the adults. "It sings to us and keeps the cold away. The metal human brings us food." Marcus blinked. "I bring you food?" The second hatchling, caught in Cathara's embrace, turned its attention to Marcus. "You leave the energy bars in the bright wrapping, and the water bottles. We know you know we are here." "I thought the supply inventory was running low," Marcus said weakly. "I blamed it on clerical errors." The third hatchling, the smallest of the group, approached Marcus directly. Its scales seemed to shift color more dramatically than the others, cycling through different shades of copper and gold. "You did not report us to the flying machines. You could have called the hunters, but you did not." Marcus knelt down, bringing himself closer to the hatchling's eye level. "I didn't know you were here. Not really. I suspected something, but I thought you were just small animals seeking warmth." "We are small," the hatchling said seriously, "and we needed warmth. The traveling between stars is very cold." Vorthak set Velthar down gently and fixed Marcus with an intense stare. You provided aid to our young without knowing their nature. You protected them from discovery. Why? Marcus thought about the question. Because they were not hurting anyone. The power drain was manageable, and whatever was living here seemed peaceful. I saw no reason to disturb them. Even when you discovered they were dragons? I didn't know for certain until just now, Marcus admitted. But even if I had known, what was I supposed to do? They are just children. The adult dragons exchanged what might have been meaningful looks. Kethara spoke first. This human shows wisdom beyond his species' reputation. Agreed, said the dark-scaled dragon. The stories speak of human cruelty and fear-driven aggression. This one chose compassion instead. Vorthak continued to study Marcus. What is your name? Human who protects dragon young. Marcus Chen. And I really didn't protect them. I just didn't interfere. Non-interference is a form of protection, Vorthak said. In the galaxy we know most species would have called for weapons the moment they suspected dragon presence. You chose differently. The smallest hatchling rubbed against Marcus's leg like an enormous cat. He smells kind, it announced, and his thoughts are warm colors. Marcus reached out hesitantly and touched the hatchling's head. Its scales were surprisingly smooth, and he could feel the warmth radiating from beneath them. What is your name? Siretha, the hatchling replied. It means fire seeker in the old tongue. I like warm things. I noticed, Marcus said with a smile. Vorthak's massive form seemed to relax slightly. The Crimson Flame owes you a debt, Marcus Chen. You have protected our most precious treasures. Anyone would have done the same, Marcus said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. No, Vorthak said firmly. They would not. We have searched many worlds and met many species. Fear and suspicion are the common responses to our presence. Kindness is rare. Marcus stood up, still amazed that he was having a conversation with creatures from legend. What happens now? Will you be taking them home? Eventually, Kethara said, but first we must understand how 3 hatchlings traveled across interstellar space without adult guidance. This should not be possible. Velthar looked somewhat sheepish. We may have borrowed a ship. Borrowed? Vorthak's voice carried clear parental exasperation. We were curious about the humans, Siretha explained. The traders tell such interesting stories. We wanted to see for ourselves. And we left navigation charts, the third hatchling added helpfully. Mostly. Marcus was beginning to understand why Vorthak looked tired. 3 dragon children stole a starship to go on a field trip to see humans. It was not stealing, Velthar protested. We left a note. A note that was destroyed when you crashed the ship into an asteroid field, the dark-scaled dragon said dryly. That was an accident, Siretha said, and we made it to the human colony safely. By hitchhiking on a cargo freighter, Kethara pointed out. Do you have any idea how worried we have been? The hatchlings hung their heads in what was clearly a universal gesture of childhood contrition. Marcus found himself fighting back a smile. Apparently, some things were the same across species. Well, he said, they are safe now, and they haven't caused any real problems. The power drain is manageable, and they have been careful not to damage anything important. You would allow them to stay? Vorthak asked. Marcus considered the question. It is not really my decision. I am just a maintenance technician. But from my perspective, they are welcome as long as they want to stay. The 3 hatchlings immediately perked up, their scales brightening noticeably. Can we stay, Father? Velthar asked. The humans are much more interesting than the traders said. Please? Siretha added. using what Marcus suspected was a carefully calculated expression of adorable pleading. Vorthok looked at his offspring, then at Marcus, then at the other adult dragons. This is highly irregular. Dragon young traditionally learn about the galaxy under careful supervision. But they have learned, Cathera pointed out. They successfully navigated interstellar space, found a safe refuge, and established peaceful contact with an alien species. These are considerable achievements. They also stole a ship and gave their entire clan heart palpitations, the dark-scaled dragon added. Details, Velthar said dismissively. Marcus cleared his throat. If I may make a suggestion, why don't you stay for a few days? Let the hatchlings show you around the settlement, and you can decide what you think about humans for yourselves. We are not as exciting as dragon adventures, but we are usually peaceful. Vorthok was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of decision that Marcus could feel in his chest. Very well. The crimson flame will remain on this world for one full cycle of its moon. We will observe these humans and judge whether they are worthy of our young's admiration. The hatchlings erupted in excited celebration, their mental voices overlapping in a cacophony of joy that made Marcus's head ring. Siraitha began dancing around the thermal unit, her scales cycling rapidly through different shades of copper and gold. Thank you, Marcus Chen, she said between celebratory loops. You have given us the greatest gift. Marcus watched the reunion and felt something warm settle in his chest. Just try not to eat anyone, okay? The colonists are friendly, but they scare easily. We will be on our best behavior, Velthar promised solemnly. Famous last words, Cathara muttered, but her tone was fond. As the dragons continued their reunion, Marcus realized that his quiet mining colony was about to become considerably more interesting. He just hoped everyone survived the experience. The emergency council meeting convened exactly 47 minutes after the dragons landed in the settlement square. Marcus found himself sitting at a conference table surrounded by 7 very nervous colonial administrators trying to explain why 4 massive predators were now camping outside their windows. Let me understand this correctly, said Director Harrison, a thin man whose voice trembled despite his attempts to sound authoritative. You have been harboring 3 alien creatures in our thermal plant for 3 weeks, and now their parents have arrived to collect them? That is the simplified version, Marcus replied. But they are not just alien creatures. They are intelligent beings with their own culture and society, and they have been completely peaceful. Councilwoman Martinez leaned forward, her expression skeptical. Peaceful? Marcus? Those things could incinerate this entire settlement without breaking a sweat. Just because they haven't attacked yet doesn't mean they won't. Through the conference room's viewport, Marcus could see Vorthok and the other adult dragons arranged in what appeared to be a defensive formation around the settlement's central plaza. The hatchlings were nowhere to be seen, probably still exploring their makeshift home in the thermal plant. The sight was both magnificent and terrifying. They came here looking for their children, Marcus explained patiently. They had every reason to believe we might have harmed them. Instead of attacking first and asking questions later, they chose to communicate. That tells me something important about their character. Or their tactics, muttered Chief Security Officer Yamamoto. Maybe they're just being cautious because they're outnumbered. Outnumbered? Marcus stared at the security chief. By who? Our total military assets consist of 6 security guards with non-lethal weapons and a defense grid that takes 4 hours to warm up. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it before we knew they were here. Director Harrison activated his tablet and scrolled through what appeared to be regulations. Colonial protocol is clear on this matter. Any contact with potentially hostile alien intelligence must be reported immediately to Sector Command. We should have called for military support the moment they arrived. And then what? Marcus asked. A military response team shows up with weapons and aggressive intentions, and we find out whether dragons are as peaceful as they seem? That sounds like a great way to start an interstellar war. At least it would be a short war, Yamamoto said grimly. Councilman Roberts, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. What do they want, Marcus? Besides collecting their children, I mean. Why are they staying? Marcus thought about Vorthak's words. They want to understand us. Their hatchlings came here because they were curious about humans, and now the adults want to see what captured their children's interest. They're going to observe us for one lunar cycle and make a decision. A decision about what? Martinez asked. Whether we're worthy of their young's admiration, Marcus said, and probably whether we're a threat to dragon civilization. The room fell silent. Outside, one of the dragons shifted position, and the building trembled slightly from the vibration. Several council members jumped at the sound. Wonderful, Harrison said weakly. We're being evaluated by creatures that could level a city. No pressure. Marcus stood up, suddenly tired of the fear-driven discussion. Look, I know this is scary. I know it's outside anything we were trained to handle. But we have an opportunity here that might never come again. First contact with a highly intelligent alien species, and they've chosen to approach us peacefully. We can either panic and potentially destroy that opportunity, or we can try to make a good impression. And if we make a bad impression? Roberts asked. Marcus thought about the golden intelligence in Vorthak's eyes, the careful way the adults had handled their reunion with the hatchlings, the patience they had shown with a nervous human technician. Then we deal with the consequences. But I don't think they're here to judge us harshly. I think they're genuinely curious. Curiosity from creatures that could burn us to ash is not particularly comforting, Martinez said. Would you rather they were completely indifferent to us? Marcus countered. Because that's the alternative. Either they see us as worth their attention or they see us as irrelevant. I know which one I prefer. Director Harrison looked around the table, gauging the expressions of his fellow council members. What exactly are you proposing, Marcus? I propose we be ourselves, Marcus said. Show them what human civilization actually looks like. Let them see our technology, our art, our social structures. Give them the same courtesy we would want if the situation were reversed. And if they decide they don't like what they see, Marcus shrugged, then at least we'll have tried, and maybe we'll learn something about ourselves in the process. Before anyone could respond, the building's communication system activated. All council members, please report to the main plaza immediately. The dragons are requesting a formal meeting. The council members exchanged nervous glances. Director Harrison straightened his uniform jacket and tried to look official. Well, gentlemen and ladies, I suppose this is where we find out whether Marcus's faith in alien diplomacy is justified? They filed out of the conference room and made their way to the main plaza, where a small crowd of colonists had gathered at a respectful distance from the dragons. Marcus noticed that Vorthak had positioned himself near the settlement's central fountain, while the other three adults formed a loose semicircle. The arrangement seemed designed to appear non-threatening while still maintaining tactical advantage. Humans of this settlement, Vorthak's voice resonated in their minds. We wish to speak with your leaders. Director Harrison stepped forward, visibly fighting to control his nervousness. I am Director Harrison, Administrator of Terran Station 7. These are my council members. We welcome you to our settlement. Vorthak's massive head tilted slightly, studying the small group of humans. You show courage by facing us directly, Director Harrison. We appreciate honesty over protocol. Thank you, Harrison managed. What can we do for you? We wish to understand your people, Vorthak replied. Our young have chosen to make their temporary home among you, and we must determine whether this choice shows wisdom or foolishness. Councilwoman Martinez found her voice. What would you like to know about us? Cathera stepped forward, her purple-tinged scales catching the light. "Tell us about your society. How do you organize yourselves? How do you resolve conflicts? How do you care for your young?" Marcus watched as the council members struggled with the enormity of trying to explain human civilization to alien beings. Director Harrison cleared his throat and began a halting explanation of colonial government structure. "Our settlement operates under a charter from the Terran Colonial Authority," he said. "We make local decisions through democratic consensus, with ultimate oversight from our home government. We came here to establish mining operations and to expand human presence in this sector." "Mining," the dark-scaled dragon said thoughtfully. "You strip resources from the planet for your own use. Do you consider the impact on the world's natural systems?" The question clearly caught Harrison off guard. "We follow all environmental regulations," he said defensively. "Our operations are designed to minimize ecological damage." "But you do cause damage," Vorthak observed. It was not an accusation, merely a statement of fact. "Some, yes," Harrison admitted, "but we also bring benefits, technology, medical supplies, knowledge exchange with other worlds. We're part of a larger community of species working together." "Show us," Cathara said. "We wish to see how humans live and work." And so began the most unusual cultural exchange in colonial history. Over the next several hours, the dragons toured the settlement with the awkward formality of visiting dignitaries. They observed the mining operations with keen interest, asking detailed questions about extraction techniques and resource management. They examined the agricultural domes with what appeared to be approval, particularly impressed by the hydroponic systems. Marcus found himself serving as an unofficial liaison, translating human customs and explaining technological concepts. The dragons were remarkably quick learners, grasping complex principles with minimal explanation. They seemed especially interested in human engineering solutions and problem-solving approaches. "Your species compensates for physical limitations with technological innovation," Vorthak observed as they watched an automated harvesting system. "This is clever adaptation." "We're not as physically capable as dragons," Marcus agreed. "So we build tools to extend our abilities." "This is wisdom," Cathara said. "Many species attempt to overcome limitation through force. Humans choose to overcome it through ingenuity." The tour took an interesting turn when they reached the settlement's educational facility. A group of children were having their afternoon lessons, and several of them pressed against the windows to stare at the dragons with expressions of pure wonder. "Your young show no fear," the dark-scaled dragon noticed. "This is unusual. Most species teach their children to fear dragons." "Our children are taught to be curious about new things," explained Teacher Morrison, who had joined the group despite her obvious nervousness. "We encourage questions rather than assumptions." One of the children, a boy of perhaps 8 years old, raised his hand with desperate urgency. "Can I ask them something?" Teacher Morrison looked at the dragons uncertainly. "Is that acceptable?" "Children's questions are often the most honest," Vorthak replied. "We would welcome them." The boy practically bounced with excitement. "Are you really dragons, like in the stories?" "We are what your species calls dragons," Vorthak confirmed. "Though we suspect your stories may not be entirely accurate." "Do you really breathe fire?" Cathara tilted her head thoughtfully. "We can generate intense heat, but it is more complex than simply breathing fire. Would you like to see?" Before the adults could object, Cathara opened her mouth and released a stream of superheated air that caused the nearby fountain to begin steaming. The children gasped in delight while the adults took several steps backward. "That's amazing!" the boy exclaimed. "Why do you do that?" "Many reasons," Cathara explained patiently. "Communication, defense, metalworking, cooking food. It is a natural ability, like your ability to make tools with your hands." Another child raised her hand. "Where do you live?" "We come from a world called Piranthia, many light years from here. the dark-scaled dragon replied. "It is a world of mountains and eternal flames, where the very rocks burn with inner fire." "That sounds beautiful," the girl said wistfully. "It is," Vorthak said gently, "but this world has its own beauty. We have noticed the way light plays through your crystal formations, and your sunsets paint the sky in colors we do not see on Pyranthea." Marcus watched the interaction with growing amazement. The dragons were not just tolerating the children's questions, they seemed genuinely interested in sharing their knowledge. This was far from the fearsome conquerors that human legends described. The educational tour continued, with the dragons visiting various workshops and laboratories. They observed human craftsmanship with obvious appreciation, particularly impressed by the delicate work being done in the electronics fabrication lab. "Your tools are so small," Kethara marveled as she watched a technician work on circuit boards. "How do you manipulate such tiny components?" "Practice and precision instruments," the technician replied, still somewhat stunned to be explaining his job to a dragon. "We can't work with our bare hands at this scale, so we use microscopes and specialized tools." "Fascinating," Vorthak said. "We are beginning to understand why our young found humans so interesting." "You approach problems from directions we would never consider." The day's tour concluded at the settlement's community center, where several colonists had prepared an impromptu cultural presentation. Musicians played instruments, artists displayed their work, and storytellers shared tales from Earth's history and literature. The dragons listened to everything with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions or requesting clarification about human customs. They seemed particularly intrigued by the concept of fiction, the idea that humans created elaborate stories for entertainment rather than historical record. "You tell stories that are not true?" the dark-scaled dragon asked. "But you know they are not true?" "That's the point," explained Dr. Sarah Kim, the settlement's anthropologist. "Fiction allows us to explore ideas and emotions without real consequences. We can experience adventure, romance, tragedy, triumph, all within the safety of imagination." "This is play," Kethara said slowly. "Sophisticated play for adult minds." "Exactly," Dr. Kim agreed. "Art, music, literature, they're all forms of play that help us understand ourselves and our world." "Dragons also play," Vorthak said thoughtfully. "But our play is more physical. Aerial competitions, challenges of strength and skill. We had not considered mental play as a cultural development." As the evening wore on, Marcus noticed that the atmosphere had shifted dramatically from the morning's tension. Colonists who had been terrified of the dragons were now asking questions and sharing stories. Children drew pictures of their new dragon friends. Adults debated philosophy and engineering with beings from another world. The transformation was remarkable, but Marcus suspected it was only the beginning. The dragon's lunar cycle of observation would last another 27 days, and he was beginning to understand that this was as much about the dragons learning from humans as it was about them evaluating human worthiness. As the formal presentations ended, and colonists began to drift back to their homes, Vorthak approached Marcus privately. "Your people continue to surprise us," the dragon leader said. "We expected fear, suspicion, perhaps attempts at exploitation or conquest. Instead, we find curiosity and genuine hospitality." "Not all humans are like that," Marcus admitted, "but most of us try to be decent to strangers, especially when those strangers haven't given us reason for hostility." "Your honesty is refreshing," Vorthak said. "Many species attempt to present only their best aspects during first contact. You acknowledge your flaws openly." "No point in pretending to be perfect," Marcus replied. "You'd figure out the truth eventually anyway." "Indeed." Vorthak was quiet for a moment, watching the last of the colonists heading home. "Tell me, Marcus Chen, What do you hope to gain from this encounter? Your people must want something from us." Marcus considered the question carefully. "Knowledge, I suppose. And maybe friendship if we're lucky. We're a young species, still learning our place in the galaxy. Contact with older civilizations like yours can teach us things we never would have figured out on our own. And you are not interested in dragon technology, our weapons, our starflight capabilities?" "Of course we're interested," Marcus said honestly, "but not to steal or demand. If you're willing to share knowledge, we'd be grateful. If not, we'd still consider meeting you to be valuable in itself." Vorthak's golden eyes studied Marcus for a long moment. "You speak as an individual, not as a representative of your species." "True," Marcus acknowledged. "There are humans who would see you only as a potential resource or threat. But there are also humans who would see you as potential friends and teachers. I'd like to think the second group represents our better nature." "We shall see," Vorthak said. "Tomorrow, we wish to observe your work processes more closely. Our young are fascinated by human problem-solving methods, and we would like to understand what captures their interest." "Of course," Marcus replied. "Though I should warn you, most of our work is fairly routine. Mining, maintenance, data processing. It might not be as exciting as you expect." "We have learned today that human routine contains remarkable complexity," Vorthak said. "We look forward to understanding it better." As the dragon leader moved away to rejoin his companions, Marcus reflected on the day's events. 24 hours ago, he had been a simple maintenance technician on a quiet mining colony. Now he was apparently serving as an ambassador between humanity and one of the galaxy's most powerful species. The responsibility was terrifying, but also exhilarating. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt like he was part of something truly important. Whether that feeling would survive the remaining 26 days of dragon observation remained to be seen. In the distance, he could see the 3 hatchlings emerging from the thermal plant, their copper scales glowing in the setting sun as they bounded toward their elders. Their joy was infectious, and Marcus found himself smiling as he watched their reunion. Perhaps Vorthak was right. Perhaps humans did approach problems from unexpected directions, and perhaps, just perhaps, that might be exactly what the galaxy needed. 3 weeks into the dragon observation period, Marcus discovered that interspecies diplomacy was significantly more complex than maintaining thermal processing units. What had begun as a simple cultural exchange had evolved into something approaching a small crisis, though not for the reasons anyone had anticipated. The problem was not that the dragons were threatening or hostile. Quite the opposite. The problem was that they were too helpful. It started when Velthar, the most technically minded of the hatchlings, observed Marcus struggling to repair a malfunctioning atmospheric processor. The unit required access to components housed 30 feet above ground level, and the settlement's only maintenance ladder was currently being used to replace solar panels on the opposite side of the colony. "This is inefficient," Velthar declared, watching Marcus debate whether to wait for the ladder or attempt a dangerous climb. "Allow me to assist." Before Marcus could object, the young dragon carefully grasped the housing unit in its claws and lifted both it and Marcus to the required height. The repair work that would have taken 3 hours was completed in 20 minutes. Word of the dragon-assisted maintenance spread quickly through the settlement. Within days, colonists were approaching the hatchlings with increasingly creative requests for assistance. Siretha's heat generation capabilities proved invaluable for metallurgy projects. The third hatchling, whose name translated roughly to Stone Shaper, could manipulate magnetic fields to move heavy equipment with precision that human technology could not match. "This is becoming problematic," Director Harrison told Marcus during their daily briefing. "Our productivity has increased by 400% since the dragons started helping. When they leave, our efficiency will return to normal levels, but our expectations won't. Marcus nodded grimly. The miners are already talking about how easy excavation could be with dragon assistance. And Dr. Kim thinks Kethara's gravitational manipulation could revolutionize our understanding of physics. Exactly. We're becoming dependent on capabilities we can't replicate. Harrison activated his tablet and showed Marcus a series of charts. Look at these numbers. Food production is up, construction times are down, and our technical problems are being solved faster than ever before. How do we explain to Colonial Command that we've become reliant on alien assistance? The situation was further complicated by the dragons' apparent enjoyment of the collaboration. The hatchlings in particular seemed to relish being useful, taking obvious pride in their contributions to human projects. Velthar had become fascinated with human engineering principles and spent hours discussing theoretical improvements with the settlement's technical staff. Your fusion reactor design is elegant but limited, he told Chief Engineer Rodriguez during one of their frequent conversations. Have you considered matrix containment instead of magnetic bottles? The energy efficiency would increase dramatically. Rodriguez, who had been working with fusion technology for 20 years, found himself frantically taking notes. Matrix containment? I've never heard of that approach. It requires precise gravitational manipulation, Velthar explained casually. Most species cannot achieve the necessary field coherence, but dragons can generate the effect naturally. I could show you, if you wish. Please, Rodriguez said immediately. Within hours, Velthar had demonstrated a containment technique that could potentially revolutionize human energy production. The implications were staggering, and Rodriguez was already drafting reports to Colonial Command about the breakthrough. Marcus watched this exchange with growing unease. The dragons were sharing advanced technology with casual generosity, apparently unaware of how transformative their knowledge could be for human civilization. The question was whether this generosity would continue after their evaluation period ended. His concerns were validated during a private conversation with Vorthak later that evening. Your people have impressed us, the dragon leader said as they walked through the settlement's gardens. Their curiosity and adaptability exceed our expectations. We begin to understand why our young chose to remain among you. But, Marcus prompted, sensing reservation in the dragon's tone. But we also see how quickly humans adapt their behavior when presented with superior capabilities, Vorthak replied. Your people are becoming dependent on our assistance in ways they may not fully recognize. You've noticed that too, Marcus said. I was wondering if you had concerns about that. Dragons do not typically share our abilities so freely, Vorthak explained. Most species become either fearful or acquisitive when exposed to dragon capabilities. Your people show a different pattern, but one that may be equally problematic. They paused beside a fountain where several human children were playing with Siretha, the young dragon allowing them to ride on her back while carefully controlling her body temperature to keep them comfortable. The scene was charming, but Marcus could see Vorthak's point. We're not trying to exploit you, Marcus said carefully. But I admit it's hard to resist accepting help when it's offered so freely. The fault is not entirely with your people, Vorthak acknowledged. Our young are eager to prove their worth, and they enjoy the admiration your people show for their abilities. It is a natural response, but one with potential consequences. What kind of consequences? Vorthak was quiet for a long moment, watching his daughter play with the human children. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what happens to your people when we leave? The question cut to the heart of Marcus's concerns. They go back to solving problems the hard way, and they probably spend a lot of time wishing you were still here. And if we do not leave? If we choose to remain and continue providing assistance? Marcus thought about that scenario. Then humans become junior partners in a relationship with vastly superior beings. We might advance rapidly, but we'd also lose something important about what makes us human. Precisely, Vorthak said approvingly. You understand the dilemma. Our young see only the joy of helping and being appreciated. We must consider the long-term implications for both species. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Cathara, who approached with obvious urgency. Father, we have received a communication from the Conclave. They demand immediate report on our findings. Vorthak's expression darkened. The Conclave grows impatient. What specifically do they request? A formal evaluation of human threat potential and recommended protocols for future contact, Cathara replied. They want to know whether humans should be classified as allies, subjects, or obstacles. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Subjects? The Conclave oversees dragon relations with younger species, Vorthak explained. When we encounter a new civilization, we must determine the appropriate relationship structure. Some species become trading partners, others become protectorates, and some are quarantined until they develop sufficient wisdom to interact safely with galactic civilization. And if they're classified as obstacles? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Obstacles are prevented from expanding beyond their home systems, Vorthak said bluntly. Permanently. The weight of that statement settled over Marcus like a cold blanket. Humanity's future might depend on the dragon's evaluation, and they were apparently running out of time to make a good impression. How long do we have? He asked. The Conclave has granted us 5 more days to complete our assessment, Cathara replied. After that, we must return to Paranthea with our recommendations. 5 days, Marcus repeated. And what criteria are they using to make their decision? 3 primary factors, Vorthak explained. First, your species' capacity for wisdom and peaceful coexistence. Second, your potential for positive contribution to galactic civilization. Third, your ability to manage power responsibly without becoming a threat to other species. Marcus thought about humanity's track record in those areas and felt his stomach sink. That's a challenging evaluation. Indeed, Vorthak agreed. Which brings us to a decision we must make. Do we recommend humans as they are, knowing their flaws and limitations? Do we recommend them as they could become, with dragon guidance and assistance? Or do we recommend caution until your species matures further? Before Marcus could respond, the settlement's emergency communication system activated. Director Harrison's voice echoed across the colony with barely controlled panic. All personnel report to defensive positions immediately. Multiple unknown vessels approaching at high velocity. This is not a drill. In the distance, Marcus could see points of light growing rapidly brighter against the darkening sky. Ships were approaching, and from their formation and speed, they were not arriving for a friendly visit. Human military? Cathara asked. No, Marcus replied grimly. Our ships don't move like that, and we weren't expecting any arrivals for another month. Vorthak's eyes blazed with sudden intensity. Cathara, gather the young immediately. This may be the test we were hoping to avoid. The approaching ships resolved into sleek, predatory forms that Marcus did not recognize. They moved with purpose and precision, clearly military vessels from a species unknown to human databases. The lead ship was massive, easily dwarfing the settlement's modest defensive capabilities. Marcus, Director Harrison's voice came through his personal communicator. We need you in the command center immediately. The aliens are demanding to speak with whoever is in charge of human-dragon relations. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders once again. I'll be right there. He started toward the command center, but Vorthak's voice stopped him. Marcus Chen, before you go, I want you to understand something. What happens in the next few hours may determine not just the future of your settlement, but the future relationship between our species. No pressure, Marcus said weakly. Indeed, but know this. The Crimson Flame has grown fond of your people. We will not abandon you easily." The dragon's words provided some comfort as Marcus rushed toward what might be the most important conversation in human history. Behind him, he could hear the adult dragons calling to their young, their voices carrying urgent commands in the ancient dragon tongue. The command center was chaos when Marcus arrived. Communication signals filled the air as Colonial Command tried to establish contact with the approaching vessels. Defense grid operators reported that their weapons were online, but woefully inadequate for the size of ships they faced. "Marcus, thank goodness," Director Harrison said as he entered. "We've identified the approaching vessels. They're hegemony ships." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. The hegemony was one of the galaxy's most aggressive expansionist powers, known for their philosophy that might makes right and their tendency to subjugate or eliminate species they considered inferior. What do they want? Unknown. But they've specifically requested communication with human leadership regarding our illegal harboring of dragon fugitives, Harrison replied. "They seem to think we're holding the dragons against their will." "That's ridiculous," Marcus said. "The dragons came here looking for their children. No one forced them to stay." "Try explaining that to a hegemony battle fleet," Chief Security Officer Yamamoto said grimly. "They're not known for listening to reason." The main communication screen activated, displaying the bridge of the lead hegemony vessel. The creature that appeared was vaguely reptilian, but far removed from anything that might be called a dragon. Its scales were gray and black, and its eyes held the cold intelligence of a predator that had never known doubt. "I am Admiral Krex of the Hegemony Third Fleet," the creature announced. "You will surrender the criminal dragons you are harboring, along with any technology they have provided to your primitive species. Compliance will result in your continued existence. Resistance will not." Director Harrison stepped forward, trying to project authority despite his obvious nervousness. "I am Director Harrison of Terran Station 7. The dragons here are our guests, not our prisoners. They are free to leave whenever they choose." "Irrelevant," Admiral Krex replied coldly. "Dragons are considered strategic assets by hegemony doctrine. Their presence in human territory constitutes theft of galactic resources. You will surrender them immediately." "Actually," came a new voice, powerful and resonant with controlled fury, "dragons consider themselves property of no one." Vorthak materialized on the communication screen through some technological means Marcus did not understand. The dragon leader's presence dominated the display, his golden eyes blazing with anger that seemed to heat the air around them. "Vorthak of the Crimson Flame," Admiral Krex said with obvious distaste, "you and your spawn will surrender immediately. The hegemony has legal claim to this sector." "The hegemony has many claims," Vorthak replied dangerously. "Few of them are legitimate. Dragons recognize no authority save their own." "Then you will be reminded of your place in the galactic order," Krex snarled. "Prepare to be boarded." "I think not," Vorthak said. The communication screen went dark, but not before Marcus saw something that made his heart race. Behind Admiral Krex, alerts were flashing on the hegemony ship's bridge as their sensors detected something approaching. Through the command center's main viewport, Marcus could see the adult dragons rising into the evening sky, their scales glowing with inner fire. They moved with deadly purpose, no longer the peaceful observers they had been for the past weeks. "This is where we discover whether dragons are truly as dangerous as the legends claim," Director Harrison said quietly. Marcus watched the three adult dragons position themselves between the human settlement and the approaching hegemony fleet. They seemed impossibly small against the massive alien warships, but their presence radiated power that made the air itself seem to tremble. "Actually," Marcus said, remembering Vorthak's earlier words about the test they were hoping to avoid, "I think this is where we discover whether humans are worthy of dragon protection." What happened next would determine the future of both species, and Marcus found himself hoping that 3 weeks of cultural exchange had created bonds strong enough to survive the crucible of battle. The dragons had said they were evaluating humanity's potential. Now it seemed that evaluation was about to become very practical indeed. In the distance, the hegemony ships were powering their weapons, confident in their technological superiority. They were about to learn why dragons had survived and thrived in a hostile galaxy for millions of years, and humanity was about to discover what it truly meant to have the friendship of the Crimson Flame.